Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 24th episode of the Closures Podcast. I'm your host, Marco Alvarado, and I'm here today with two very special guests. One more special than the other because one has not been on this podcast before. One has been a reoccurring guest many, many times. Before we get into that, I just got to say, please follow us on Instagram. We are at The Closures Podcast on there. On Facebook, at Closures Podcast. And on YouTube, we are just The Closures Podcast. And we have videos that have the audio along with some cool visuals that you could follow along with if you so please. If not, just listen to the audio on either Spotify, Apple Music, or any other your preferred podcasting streaming services. So with all that out of the way, we got Quinn the Moondog Kalani reprising his role.
Hey, how's it going?
And we got Professor, Director, Visionary, Mark Steensland. Hello.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
Better now that I've been called a visionary.
I know, right? It's all about flattery on the Closures
That's
Podcast.
Great. I'm ready for it.
Nice. So you have been on podcasts before.
I have.
So how was that experience? The other times you've been on the podcast?
Oh, it's always interesting. It's always good to talk with people about stuff that you like to talk about. So yeah, so it's good.
What did you talk about on the other podcast?
Oh boy, gosh, one of them was about a Fulci film called City of the Living Dead, and so it's kind of a themed thing, and we spent an hour talking about that and related subjects. The other one that I can remember right now was an interview about my most recent book called In the Scrape, which just came out last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so I was on a podcast for authors, with my co-author.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's really special. Yeah. I didn't even know you had a book out, but we can definitely talk about that too. So just to give everybody a brief overview of who Mark is as a person, because we had a whole episode about Quinn. So the whole first episode was all Quinn. So Mark is currently a professor at a local community college, and teaching film. He has a very storied past in the film industry, and he's an author as well. You've written screenplays and stuff like that before. You've done it all. You've done everything that you possibly could in the industry. I can assume, and which is really cool, really special to have somebody on that has that type of background. So how did you get your start within the industry? What made you want to?
Oh, that's two questions.
Yeah, I guess it is.
So, well, the first thing that really kind of got me interested in film, I would have to say, is probably television, ironically enough. So when I was very young, a show was premiering called The Night Gallery, which was a Rod Serling show, and it was his follow-up to Twilight Zone, sort of. And my parents were very interested in that because they liked the Twilight Zone so much. So we watched Night Gallery, and that had a big impact on me. And this was about the same time that stuff like Dark Shadows was on television, and other things that were similar to that. So I was kind of into that sort of thing at that early age.
Yeah.
And then my father died when I was very young, and I was 6. And after he died, I say probably a year after he died, my mom briefly kind of dated a guy who was a manager of a local movie theater.
Oh.
And so for fun, that's what we did. I mean, I was the youngest, and so she didn't kind of want to leave me at home. So I went on a lot of things with them, which was mostly going to the movies.
Right.
So we went to the movies a lot, and because he was the manager, then I got to see the projection booth and
that's
the
really
office
cool.
and the snack bar behind the snack bar, and all the stuff that you don't get to see if you just go to the movies. So that obviously had an impact. Plus, I got to see all kinds of stuff that I never should have seen at that age.
Like what?
Legend of Hell House. Night Watch, I mean.
Oh, really?
Elizabeth Taylor movie.
Yeah.
Let's see, Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. and just all kinds of stuff. I mean, movies were different then.
Yeah.
And so PG movies were really not even what we think of as PG movies now. You know, I mean, Planet of the Apes was rated G.
Oh, really?
When it came out. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that should tell you something.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know. So, anyhow, I saw a lot of stuff that then really had an impact on me in that way as well. And then my mom didn't end up staying with that guy, but the impact of film was pretty strong. And then I saw a movie called Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, when I was 9. And that really kind of pushed me in the direction more firmly of, you know, like actually wanting to do that. I went back to see it a bunch of times, and I was really, really interested in it. So all of that was kind of what got me into thinking about making films or wanting to do that or tell those kinds of stories. What got me kind of into the business was when I was a little bit older, and by the time I was in high school, I was pretty committed to the idea that that's what I wanted to do. So when I was like junior, senior in high school, and colleges would come to campus to present, everybody was ready for my question, which was, what is your film program like? Everybody would start laughing about that. Of course, that's what Steensland wants to know. And so I was pretty committed to that, but I was reading a lot, also reading like American Cinematographer and Fangoria and Cinefantastique and a lot of these, you know, print magazines that were out at the time about films that I was interested in, the making of them and so on. And I really, as I was reading these, I was kind of like, you know, they're not asking questions that I want asked.
Right.
And so I decided that I would form my own newsletter, and I would be a reporter. I would kind of get to ask these questions that I wanted. And so I got on the phone and I just started calling movie studios and like trying to get through, like, you know, I'm calling Universal Studios. Yeah, I'm calling for John Carpenter, you know. And
that's crazy.
And at the time, I mean, this was obviously long before there were cell phones, internet, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Everything was on the phone. And so, you know, obviously trial and error, I started to get the feel for, oh, you need to call the production office. So then I would get the production office number. Oh, you need to talk to the publicist. And then I would talk to the publicist. And so eventually I kind of figured out how to navigate this stuff. And pretty soon I was on the phone with Jordan Cronenweth, who shot Blade Runner. And Peter Curran, who did special visual effects for The Thing. And
that's insane. Classic.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. And so I was 17 at the time when I was doing that. And then I was with this one I was talking to this one publicist, and my dream was to meet John Carpenter, and Carpenter was shooting Starman at the time in Arizona. And I was like begging this publicist to go to the set, and he said, you need to get a real magazine to back you. And so then I started calling all these magazines, and I got American Cinematographer to agree to pay for an article, you know, from me on Starman. And so I made that arrangement, and then I literally drove to Arizona to Meteor Crater to watch Starman being filmed for a few days. And I got to meet Carpenter and interviewed the cinematographer, Don Morgan, and stuff. And as it turned out, American Cinematographer did not like what I did, and said, we're not publishing that. And the publicist was really mad about it, of course. Yeah. So I sold it to another magazine. I called another magazine, and this guy said, rewrite what you've got in my style. And then that ended up being my first professional publication. So I think I was 18 when I sold that, 19 maybe when it came out. Yeah. And that kind of started some journalism stuff. So I went to England and was on a bunch of movie sets over there on James Bond set, View to a Kill, and a Sting Jennifer Beals thing called The Bride, and Legend. I wasn't supposed to be on the set of Legend, but
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but I got on the set.
One of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be on that set, but
that's crazy.
I was there to interview the cinematographer, and he's like, "Come on," you know. And then I went out and I was looking at some stuff, and I went back to the office and I was asking for pictures, and Ridley Scott walked in and he's like, who are you and what are you doing here? Why are you asking for pictures? This is a closed set.
Yeah, that's
you're not supposed to,
insane.
the cinematographer said he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I was kind of in trouble for that, but
with Ridley Scott, that's kind of a good person to be in trouble with at that point.
Right. So a lot of that kind of stuff then was kind of a way in, and I had a lot of really good experiences as a journalist then. I did eventually write for American Cinematographer. I did a thing on Fright Night and for them, and I was the cover story for Big Trouble in Little China when Dean Cundy was the ASC, was invited to the ASC, and so I spent a bunch of time on that set. Halloween night, actually, memorable experience. Halloween night on the set of Big Trouble in Little China when Goldie Hawn brought the kids to trick or treat because Kurt Russell was shooting, and so then it was on the Fox backlot. They were shooting the stuff outside the White Tiger, and so they were on the backlot that's like a city set, and Kurt Russell went behind the facades and was answering all the doors doing the trick or treat thing. So they came to a halt so that they could do that. So,
that's crazy.
So that was pretty fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So so there was a lot of that kind of stuff, and then continuing with film school, and then other things developed from there.
Where did you go to film school?
Well, let's see. I started at a local college here at Sac State, and just did a year here, and then got accepted to a film school back in New York State called Ithaca College.
I've heard of that college.
So I went there. And it was very expensive, so I couldn't stay the whole time. But I was there for a year, and then I was there for an extra semester. But the last semester, I did an internship, and the internship was in Hollywood. So then I moved to Los Angeles and went to work for a company called Gladden Entertainment as a script reader, and then worked. They were actually shooting a movie up here, an Emilio Estevez movie called Wisdom. And I'm like, I'm from Sacramento, and they're like, well, okay, I was then going to be kind of in between things. And so I got hired on the art department on that movie and worked for a long time on another movie called Mannequin, Andrew McCarthy, Kim Cattrall thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
And so did those things, and then went to UC Santa Barbara and finished a bachelor's degree in film studies.
Oh, okay.
Then I went and did some work at UCLA in screenwriting. I got accepted into the master's program in screenwriting there. Yeah. And I was there for a little bit, but I was so burnt out on school by that time that I couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up getting a job with Marty Brest on a movie called Midnight Run. He's the guy who directed Beverly Hills Cop. Yeah. And so I was Marty's assistant on Midnight Run during post-production.
Oh, that's really cool.
And had a lot of really cool experiences there, going out to Danny Elfman's house when he was, writing the music and stuff like that. And so that was cool. And then I left that and kind of got out of the business for a little bit, came back home and back up here to Northern California, and then got into some industrial filmmaking, and then more into my own filmmaking. And then when I moved into teaching film, ended up being a really good kind of safe, secure day job that gave me a lot of time to do the other stuff.
Yeah, a lot of flexibility. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. So like you said you were in England for a time. How long were you there for?
Oh, it was just a week. It was just a week. Yeah, it was like the magazine was like, we're going to send you to England.
Oh, okay.
And here are all the movies you're going to cover. You know? So there were a bunch of stuff on the list, and I went to went to Pinewood and went to Shepperton and went to I can't remember and some the Bond movie was shooting outside of London at the chalk pits in Amberley, I think. And so just that kind of stuff. So I traveled around like that for a week and then came back, and then when I was in Los Angeles, I kind of the same thing. I was doing a lot of as I mentioned, journalistic stuff, and
Right.
most of it, frankly, was because it was an excuse to go on movie sets. I mean,
Right,
and later, much later, even like when John Carpenter was making Escape from L.A., I was like, oh, I want to go see some of that before it comes out. So
Yeah.
I got Electronic Musician to agree to publish something about the score, and then made the arrangement to go down and hang out in the studio for the day and watch John and Shirley record the score for the movie and interview them and stuff. And so it's it's cool, like that. And
that is really cool.
Yeah.
Did so how, like, because you mentioned Ridley Scott getting mad at you and all that stuff, like how long did it take you to kind of get over like the starstruckness of like being around these people that you looked up to? I would assume for some time, like, and then you see them more as just like colleagues and just people that you're working with, or people that you just catch glimpses of, and you have to keep it professional. Like, was it easy for you to?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. They are all just people after all,
right?
And so, although some of them I think don't think so, but but yeah, that's either going to be in the way or it's not, you know, and so you sort of have to, you're in a particular kind of relationship, especially as a journalist. You're there as a professional, as a fellow professional in a certain way. Yeah. And so that's really important to do that, maintain that kind of thing. So that certainly helped. And when I was working down there on some of those things, there were a lot of, like when I was working for Gladden, a lot of people came in the office, and, then it starts to be a thing where you're understanding, well, this is the way that it is.
Yeah.
I worked as a delivery person for a while for a company. And of course, being in Los Angeles, a lot of the deliveries are to well-known people, right. So you go to Jeff Bridges' house to deliver a package, or you go crazy. To somebody else's house or whatever, and they answer the door. But again, that's just the nature of it.
Yeah, that's just part of the industry.
Yeah, right.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. So with that in mind, like, have you seen a lot of people like, kind of, now that you've been in the industry for obviously quite a while, does it get kind of annoying when people kind of ask you about, like, oh, like, hey, have you ever talked to Benicio del Toro, or like, oh, did you meet Brad Pitt, or like, stuff like that? Or is
I don't get that too much. I also don't try to sort of talk about that too much.
Right.
Because who wants to? I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So you haven't met Benicio del Toro?
No, but probably. I would say of all of these things, probably one of my favorite things to say or to tell is that Tom Cruise called me on Oscar night after he gave the Oscar to Peter Jackson. He walked off stage and called me. And the reason that he did that was because at the time I was writing a book on Michael Mann, and Michael was making Collateral, and which of course had Tom Cruise in it.
Yeah.
And I was interviewing all of these people associated with Michael because it was a career, it was a book examining his whole career. And I'd already written one, and that was why I was having this new opportunity directly with him. And I was on that set all the time and all that kind of stuff. And so he couldn't get time for an interview like during shooting and stuff, except like there was this window. They decided that when he was riding home from the Oscars, that was the window for the interview. So I'm watching the Oscars, live, waiting for the phone call and watching, and then he walks off, and then my phone rings, and it's Tom Cruise, and
insane.
We get to do our interview. So
what year was that?
2003.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. That sounds about right because I was living down there. I couldn't say for sure, but anyhow, so that's one of my favorites. There's lots of other little things that are, lots and lots of stories that are really entertaining in one way or another. And then, you just being down there, there was a friend of mine who worked for a company, and they had this funny whiteboard next to the door inside the office, and the office was in Beverly Hills, and the whiteboard was celebrity sightings. And so if you went out for whatever, lunch or to go get coffee or
Yeah.
whatever, you'd likely see somebody and they'd come back in and they'd write it on the board, and sort of
Yeah.
have this running thing like, I saw Alec Baldwin, walking down the street in front of such and such, or, I saw so and so, and it just happens.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it. But again, there is sort of the importance of maintaining the professional attitude, because then you'll be remembered for that,
Exactly,
rather than being remembered for
being kind of a fan,
freaking out.
Yeah.
I mean, they know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
But so
I bet internally there were a couple times you're like, oh, I can't believe I just handed Jeff Bridges' mail. Like, oh my god. But yeah, that's funny. So since you've been in the industry for quite a while, how have you seen it change or evolve over the years from when you first started? Obviously, technology plays a part.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of just purely the technology aspect, when I went to film school at Ithaca College, we learned how to shoot film.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 16 millimeter film program, so we had to learn how to use a light meter and exposure and all that stuff. With the film photography classes, we developed our own film, and so on. We learned to cut audio with razor blades and sticky tape,
Yeah,
so
that's crazy. Super precise stuff.
Yeah. I mean, just very different.
Yeah.
And then as I was with a company here locally when I was in industrial filmmaking, and the guy who owned it bought one of the first nonlinear editing systems, a computer system called the FAST, and the 1 gigabyte hard drive were the size of shoe boxes.
Yeah.
And we were flipping out because we couldn't believe that we had a gigabyte of storage to put this video, and the best compression you could get was 5:1. But it was this really very different. I think the thing cost like $60,000 or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
funny. But it was this remarkable piece of technology. And so, I started to learn how to do that. And of course, Hollywood was changing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part of it changed. Right around then, I shot my first feature. This probably would have been in 97 when I started shooting it. And I was working for this guy, and he had all this gear, and stuff was sort of starting to shift a little bit towards, maybe videotape was okay. But I mean, this is what I had access to. So he had a Betacam, Super Pro news camera,
right,
and that thing probably was $30,000 or $40,000. But and so he let me use it, and we went out, and I decided, since I was shooting on videotape, that what I would do to try to make it look less like videotape was I would shoot it in black and white. I would make it black and white.
Okay.
So I did this kind of noirish crime story, and
that's really cool.
And made it black and white. Shot it square frame, make it look like one of those old noir movies.
Yeah.
It wasn't set in the 50s. That wasn't the conceit. But it was supposed to feel like that in a way. And, we shot it for almost nothing. We shot it for like $10,000. And then when I started approaching distributors and I said videotape, there was this instant rejection.
Really?
Yeah. Cause at the time, the only thing that was really on videotape was bad stuff or porn. And that was pretty much the reaction. And so, a couple of years went by, and a little movie called The Blair Witch Project came out and made $100,000 at the box office, or more than that, I think. And it was partially shot on videotape and partially shot on, I don't know what else, 16 millimeter, black and white, and all this kind of stuff. And it was like nobody cared. And that just completely changed everything.
Yeah.
So when I made my second feature, which was a documentary about the science fiction writer Phil Dick, nobody asked, what did you shoot it on? And that was just a few years later. Sci-Fi Channel invited us to their first film festival in 2001. And I got theatrical play dates. We played in New York City. We played in Cleveland. We played in San Francisco. Yeah. And that was all just in that little space of time. And just with that, that change, as soon as it was like, oh, okay, we can make money still,
Yeah.
then that was okay. And of course, I mean, whatever you say, for better or for worse, I mean, in a certain sense, found footage has been kind of, not the greatest thing that ever happened. And the democratization of media means that, we have more stuff than we can possibly ever watch. You know? I mean, an hour of new material is uploaded to YouTube every minute.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So there's no way you can see all that stuff. And it's good in a sense. It's also bad in a sense. You go on to Amazon Prime or Netflix and you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's just title after title after title. You have no idea.
It's overload.
The library is too big.
Yeah, it really is. So I don't think that means that there isn't good stuff. Not at all. It means that the landscape has definitely shifted. There used to be a kind of mystery to the film process. What kept people from making film was they didn't know what a light meter was, and they didn't know how to shoot film or how to develop it, or all those kinds of things. And so that kept a lot of people out. Now, I can pull my phone out of my pocket and shoot a feature.
Steven Soderbergh shot features on an iPhone.
Right, exactly. Tangerine is a absolutely fantastic film shot on an iPhone.
That's crazy.
And so it's great that the technology is allowing. I wish that I had that when I was younger.
Right.
Of course, yeah. I wish that I was, in that position. So that's been a really big change, and I would say that's probably the biggest, just because it has so shifted the landscape of what, of the business side of it. Right. I worked in video distribution for a while, selling movies on VHS to video stores.
Right.
And I was one of the first people in the country to sell DVDs to video stores. I was the DVD guy for our company, because we didn't know whether the technology was going to last or not. There were other technologies that had come out. DivX had come out, kind of not, done what they said it would. And then DVDs came out, and the studios were sort of tentative about it. And so I was doing that, but then I watched video stores really kind of go out of business, and as stuff shifted to streaming. A friend of mine had one of the first streaming video websites, and
oh really?
Yeah, and the video was the size of a postage stamp, and I showed it to this guy I was working for at the time, and he started cracking up. He's like, "Nobody's gonna watch that," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but this is where it's going.
Yeah,
I mean, this is what is possible. This
Yeah.
is what's possible. This is what's happening now.
Yeah.
This is what is gonna be a thing." And I mean, I remember when Amazon first came online, I used to call Amazon with my credit card number to put my order in, because I didn't want to put my credit card over the internet. I mean, that's how
That's what my parents were too.
Early it was, and so you really kind of see how all of this stuff has changed.
I still don't do mobile deposits.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's weird.
How is it weird?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Stresses me out.
Yeah, I do it. Yeah, I'm fascinated by all that stuff.
But another one of the casualties of streaming services, just good products slipping through the cracks.
Yeah.
For sure.
And what I also worry about is, people and their accessibility to become a filmmaker now is people creating false narratives of their own lives. And I think, you see that more and more.
That's interesting. Like false narratives, you mean on social media and stuff like that? Or you mean, yeah.
I mean, social media is essentially it's your movie now.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
Pretty
fascinating.
deep.
That is pretty deep. Dang, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a tremendous amount of pressure to present only the good moments, and
those movies suck.
Yeah.
Don't they? Give us the juicy stuff.
Yeah. Well, there are
Where's
some
the
people
drama?
who do that. Yeah, there are some people who
Show
do
us
that,
your
for sure.
divorce.
Yeah. Well, or whatever it happens to be, bad stuff that happens, and whether it's real or staged or whatever. But yeah, for sure. So that's been something else that's really changed a lot of, I think just the way we're living. Yeah.
Yeah. What I know that I don't know if the debate on these two different, very closely related entities, I guess you could call them. I don't know if the debate is really hot right now or not, but analog versus digital. I know that like there's some purists out there that only film with film, and there's some that only use, digital cameras. Has that argument or that debate kind of been squandered or squashed? Or because I'm not really in that.
Yeah. My personal feeling is that it feels that way because we're in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. But if you go back and you look at any technology that has come in, it's been the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cars. Oh my God, no, we can't be doing this.
Yeah.
Planes. What are you kidding?
Yeah.
Color film. What? Widescreen. 3D. Whatever it is, it's a technology. People have a tendency to resist what is new. At least some people do.
Yeah.
And you make your argument that, well, when digital first came out,
mm-hmm.
No, it didn't have the capabilities that film did. Of course not.
Yeah.
But it increasingly, does have capabilities that film doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And I think debating the technology is less important than debating the idea that we should be telling good stories no matter what technology we've got. I mean, Toy Story is the first movie that was produced entirely inside a computer.
Yep.
Well, what are we going to say? Oh, that's terrible because it was produced inside a computer. No, it's also one of the greatest movies ever made, you know? And
it's a feat within itself. For
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So the idea that they took the technology and told that particular story in that particular way
mm-hmm.
at that particular time, that's what's important.
Right.
And so I wish we'd have more debates about what's a good story and concentrate more on making good stories instead of what you shoot it on. Which, one of the guys that I met when I was writing the book on Michael Mann is a guy named Guzmano Cesaretti. Mm-hmm. And Guzmano's, he's like Michael's visual consultant. He's a photographer, but he also kind of does all this stuff with the way the movies look and so on.
Right.
And Guzmano, he told me that when people see his photographs, he says the first thing they always ask him is, what kind of camera did you use? And he says, I always laugh because as if that had anything to do with it.
Yeah, like the camera itself took the photo.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And and I think that's a really insightful thing to apply to kind of all of these different technologies. Yeah. That's not really what is the important part. Mm-hmm. The important part is what is the process that got the photo, what is the photo doing emotionally, right? And those kinds of things. But we have this tendency to think that way. Yeah. And so, I think that's the way we should feel. But it's just going to keep changing.
I mean, definitely.
There's less and less reason to be on film, especially when you get to exhibition. Yeah. The studios, in terms of the idea of making 5,000 prints of a movie. I mean, do you understand the cost associated with 5,000 prints and shipping that to every movie theater? I mean, this is what was done for years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And now it can just go over the satellite to the hard drive to the theater, and you get a perfectly clean projection every single time. I mean, William Friedkin watched every print of The Exorcist personally because he wanted to be sure that they were all exactly what his intent was.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, that is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're watching hundreds of prints of a movie because you want to be sure that none of them, have a problem with color or scratched or whatever.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. No. But now you can just go, yes, that is, we can see that it's fine and it's going to be perfect no matter what. You know, if we play for 3 months or, whatever.
And then it's just going to get better and better from here too. Like, I don't think there's ever, like, I don't know, like once digital kind of surpassed analog in that sense, or film, It just kind of, I mean, the race is kind of done at that point. Like, there's really no debate,
Well,
in my opinion.
Something about, like film, a lot like with other forms of art. What's old is new, and what's new is old again. So, it will come forth in waves and cycles.
Mm-hmm. So. That's true.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing a resurgence in vinyl, for instance, and...
Look at all this film grain!
Yeah, and I mean, if there's some reason to be using a particular technology, then I think that's a really fascinating idea as well. There was I can't remember exactly what it was called, but I think Fisher-Price made a children's video camera called a Pixel Cam or something like this. And it was little tiny thing. It shot black and white video. And for a while, filmmakers were like, I'm going to make movies with this, And so they created this very interesting sort of image because of the technology. And so then if you're telling a story that's exploiting that aspect for a valid reason, then by all means do that. If film is something, it's like black and white. If black and white is something that contributes to your story, like Spielberg's decision to shoot Schindler's List in black and white, absolutely. I mean, that's the way that movie should have been shot, in my opinion. And
I agree.
So
the most impactful moment of the film is when there's color in it.
Right, and only because it's in black and white. So I think there's lots of reasons for that. I'm not saying that technology should replace other technology to the point that you completely throw it away or deny its existence. I mean, some of the most fascinating stuff was done back in 1995 when they did the Lumiere thing and sent those cameras to filmmakers all over the world with the 1 minute of film, with the original recipe, so to speak. And you got to see what people would do with that technology, with our thinking. So, again, I think I would be more interested in those kinds of discussions than somebody dismissing something. As I was dismissed because I was on video. Therefore it must be bad. I mean, I disagree with that.
Yeah, that's true.
In the same way I disagree with, it's this, therefore it must be good. So.
And it's just interesting to see, like, across mediums how that is a constant struggle for artists. Because like with music specifically, because I'm not really in the world of film like you kind of both are. Music's more my thing, and like that amplifier right here is a pure tube amp, and there's a lot of musicians who are like, I only will play through tube amps, I will never play through solid state pieces of crap or whatever. But then my friend just lent me a solid state amp, and I've been playing through it, and you can't really tell the difference. Like, it's they're both great. And it's interesting to see how it extends beyond.
It's flash over substance.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, everything starts and ends with the story. So
well, it's also maybe a little bit of people trying to think that the technology in some way equals the talent. Like this question to Gizmono, what camera did you use? If I go get that camera, I'll be as good as you. No, that's that's
definitely
that's
not
unlikely. But
no, that makes sense. So you both bring up stories, and what kind of stories? I guess I'll extend the question to you too, Quinn. So, what stories kind of pique your interest or are piquing your interest at the moment? Like, what kind of stories are you guys looking to view?
Do you mean like what's on television or in film or right now?
I just mean in general, like anything that you're thinking about, or any genre or that you're wanting to write or explore, or
often
or what you gravitate towards naturally.
What I gravitate towards watching isn't what I gravitate towards writing. I'm not really too sure how to answer that, to be honest with you. But I don't know. Someone else take the reins. While I think about it.
Like for me, like I'll start. So like for me specifically, I've been watching a lot more, mystery inspired stuff, whether that be sci-fi mystery things or just straight up noir inspired homage pieces, like stuff like that. I'm really into that at the moment. I have never made a movie or anything like that, but ideas always flash in my mind of like what I would like to do, or narratives, or like
I think I see
premises of like stories. Like, what are things that are kind of
what I like to see are stories of good triumphing over evil. What I like to write about,
like Marvel movies.
is the more morbid darkness and the festering illness that creeps beneath all of us.
Wow, that's interesting. Are you currently writing anything like that?
Not currently, but I.
He's just experiencing it right
Yeah,
now.
he's really in it apparently. So how many screenplays or movies have you directed or written? I know I keep asking like multiple things at one time, and I'm sorry. I'm a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous. Like, but how many screenplays have you written? I'll say that.
I really don't know.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I used to save everything, and then it just got untenable.
Mm-hmm.
So I threw everything out at one point. This was a long time. I mean, I started writing when it was on a typewriter.
Yeah.
So you had to type each page, right?
Yeah.
And if you wanted to make changes, then that meant changing the whole page. So that, there's just been a bunch of stuff that is long gone, and probably glad that it's gone.
Right.
So I don't really know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I did write the first feature that I directed. So I did write that and produce that. I've made, a bunch of short films, some of which had screenplays, some of which I wrote the screenplays for, some of which were adapted from stories and then screenplays by other people, and some stuff like that. A movie that I just wrote, which is based on a book of mine, was just finished, and that's called The Special.
Yeah.
And that will hopefully be out later this year or sometime in 2020.
Oh, nice.
But got to see that all finished, and it did have a cast and crew screening, successful.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Thing, yeah. So that's good, and
yeah.
So
like, what are the kind of issues, I guess, that you've seen or adapting something that you've written to the screen, like a movie? Because I feel like there are some, like, it's hard to not fit everything into one. I don't know if it was a short film or it's feature length or anything, but
yeah, I mean, you have to make decisions depending on the medium, because the different things, they're capable of doing different things, so it's a good analogy is thinking like the difference between oil painting, acrylics, and watercolors, for instance.
Right.
I mean, each of those things has a very different capability.
Yeah.
And so you paint acrylic and you get something on the canvas, and then it dries fast.
Right. Yeah.
You paint oil and you can tweak it for weeks, because it doesn't dry fast. And watercolor is kind of, doing all this other stuff. A lot of it may be on its own. And so, again, some fiction is very challenging. You wouldn't want to make a movie out of it, because you're going to take away all of the stuff that make it a story worth telling by trying to translate it into a different medium.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so I've tried, at least when adapting, to adapt things that I think will be successful as films, and will work as films. So often that's kind of a very visual sort of storytelling that's already in place.
Yeah.
Although one of my short films called The Ugly File, which is it's based on a short story by a guy named Ed Gorman, and Ed said afterwards that he thought we were joking when we contacted him and said we wanted to make a movie out of the short film. He's like, or out of the short story rather.
Yeah.
And we weren't. We had some ideas about what to do, and,
right.
And he was very happy with what we did, and so you make those changes to make it work for that particular medium.
Yeah.
So that's just the nature of the process.
I imagine when adapting your own work, the editing process is probably difficult, right? Because you have to figure out what you're gonna allow other people to artistically take over.
Yeah, I mean there is a process as a writer and not as the director. Then obviously you've done what you've done, and now it goes to them, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But that's just the nature of the business. That's just the way it works. So changes get made, and in the case of like the book, the special, the book is still there. Who was it? Gosh, I can't remember. It was a noir writer, and I'm blanking on his name now, but. They said to him, they made a lot of movies out of his books, and they said, "Are you upset that Hollywood has ruined your books?" And he said, "They haven't done anything to my books. They're sitting on the shelf right there."
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name. I've heard him referenced.
Dashiell Hammett, maybe James Cain. I can't remember. So, point well taken. Yes, you can still read the book. In the case of the special, yes, you can still read the book and see that version of it. It's a little different from the movie, although the movie is 98% faithful to the book. And I think that's part of us writing a book that is very much conducive to adaptation. And that's certainly something that helps.
That's interesting.
You kind of get to see the movie in the book right away, and make it easy for them to do it that way. So I mean, we wrote the script too, but but still, you get rewritten, and but that's just what happens.
When you were writing the book, did you have in your mind that you also wanted to adapt it, or were you writing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You were. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's then that definitely does help.
Yeah.
Tie everything together, make sure that it can be adapted.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, what are some of the movies that you've seen recently that you would kind of I'm blanking on recommend? Yeah, I don't know why I can't think right now. Yeah, recommend to everybody else or to the listeners here that you've really liked, and then some that you kind of would tell people to stay away from because it's kind of.
No, I don't tell people that.
You don't?
No, there's an audience for everything.
Yeah.
And
let's talk about that. Yeah.
And I've learned that is true. That there really is an audience for everything. And the easy example I use is Sasquatch porn. Which is there's a whole subgenre on Amazon of people who write novels about people who have sexual relationships with Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And so, okay, if that's your thing, then that's your thing. If that's what you want to write, if that's what you want to read, cool. It's, maybe it's not for me, but maybe it is for you. Yeah. And so, I'm really not.
You stay away from.
I mean, if that's what you like, then like it.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let me say don't like it. So I really try to stay away from that. And
that's an interesting. That's
the other side of that is that I like stuff that people don't like. You know? I mean, I'm a fanatic for Phantom of the Paradise, and a friend of mine who is a huge movie fan and who really has a lot of respect for my taste continually says to me, I do not understand why you like that movie. I have tried to watch it over and over again, and I just don't get it. I can't watch it. But there are a bunch of people like me who love it. And so it does really kind of go both ways in that sense. And so, that's... And I'm not trying to be flippant or get out of answering the question or, or whatever.
That brings like really interesting, like philosophical questions too about just like, should people because we were talking about multimedia and just how like the internet's exploded with all this content now because it's easier to make stuff. And there's a lot of videos where they're movie reviews, but it's only negative. There's some channels that only do negative movie reviews. Some people like that, but like, I don't know, are those even like fair to make? Kind of like that's what, in my mind, that's what it kind of begs the question.
You're asking, since everyone has the ability to be a film critic, does it diminish the value of true criticism?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is that not everybody is a film critic, because we have a certain, at least I have a certain idea of what criticism means, which is that you have a deep understanding of the process and of what's involved and what kind of standards are and so on, and then you're making an assessment, hopefully, of how that thing meets those standards or does not. And I think that's completely gone away. That's not what criticism is anymore at all. And so I would have that kind of conversation. You can make, I think you can make technical comparisons of about lens choices and the way performances are and these kinds of things, that it is a different sort of discussion than whether or not you liked it.
Right.
And that's something that I try to talk about in class, is there's a difference between you liked it and it's a good movie, so you can like something that is not a good movie, but don't say a bad movie is a good movie just because you liked it. You know what I mean? And so that gets a little squishy maybe, but ultimately this stuff is whether or not you like it, whether or not you're going to go pay for it, how many times you're going to see it,
right?
And whether it works for you. And I think that is really what's important. I feel differently because I have a different kind of
perspective,
and our different sort of artistic approach. I have standards that I apply to my own stuff, and some people may not think so, but anyhow, it just so. Yeah, I think that has changed a lot of things. And I don't know, I get awfully tired of all the hate,
Yeah.
People don't know a lot of people don't know what went on behind the scenes, why something is like that, what it took to get that far.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much, you think about it, somebody spend 2 years of their life on something and you walk in and watch it and 2 hours later come out and say, that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Not even, you could leave halfway through just like, this is junk.
Yeah, right.
Meanwhile, the studio came in and just changed everything.
Yeah, right. So, you don't really know all of that stuff. And okay, does that mean that your feeling about it is not valid? Well, I mean, no, I think it's valid for you. Yeah. But, anyway, so we could get into a really sticky place, I think, with all of this kind of stuff. I there's stuff that I like, and there's stuff that I don't like that still has value to me, because it taught me one thing or another. Yeah,
that's
about
true.
How to do stuff or how not to do stuff or whatever. So I try to be pretty open-minded about things and look for what I can learn from whatever it is. Kind of no matter
whether you like it or not. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, you can like not enjoy 2001 and Space Odyssey, but you still have to acknowledge at a base level the achievement that it
exactly. That's a discussion that I have in class when I teach the science fiction class. Is that exact discussion? A lot of people really hate that movie. Yeah. But there is no denying that it's one of the greatest films ever made. Just I mean, from the sheer
technical aspect.
Yeah, not technical. I mean, it played at a movie theater in Los Angeles for a year. Yeah. When's the last time a movie played continuously at a theater for a year?
It still blows my mind when that monkey throws the bone up in the air and then all of a sudden it's the spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so, and that, you may say, I don't get that, or I don't understand why that's important, but that doesn't take away the importance. It may be not important for you, or you may not like it. But in a lot of I have another friend of mine who's a film critic who watches 2001 once a week. Wow. That's his thing. Yeah. That's his favorite. My favorite Kubrick is Eyes Wide Shut. And there's a lot of people who don't get that. Yeah. So, okay.
That makes sense.
Has there been any films that have stuck out to you so far this year?
I'm trying to think of.
I know me and Marco went and saw Midsummer together.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah,
And that stuck with us for a little bit.
literally for the next week. That's all I could think about. That's the only thing I thought about for a whole week.
I could not stop giggling while
Yeah.
watching that movie.
Well, the director did say it was a comedy.
It's
as far
hilarious.
as far as he's concerned. Yeah. And that reminds me of when a friend of mine told me that what's the Scorsese picture with Nicholson and it's
The
remake.
Departed?
Yeah. And a friend of mine told me before I went to see it, he said it's a comedy. And so then I went to see it, and I was the only person in the theater laughing because I was prepared. I was thinking of it as a comedy. People are looking at me like, what is wrong with you? But viewing it that way, it really works in an interesting.
It's a great
way.
movie.
Yeah. Same thing here with you're talking about Midsummer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think of other things that I've seen that have stuck with me in that way this year.
I know this year, Midsummer, obviously Avengers. I'm not going to get into it.
Don't at ya.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Marvel movies? Just real quick, like.
Yeah, I mean, but Doctor Strange is my favorite.
Yeah,
so,
I feel that.
And a lot of people are like, they really
take all my money.
They're really.
I love Doctor Strange.
Okay, good.
I like Scott Derrickson. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, I know about the new one. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was really excited to hear that. So, and whatever you want to say, they're doing amazing things, and it's pretty remarkable stuff that's going on. Yeah, that's cool.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was all right. Did you see it?
I have not seen it yet. Yeah, haven't seen it yet. So
I love that movie.
There's been a lot of complaints about the portrayal of Bruce Lee.
Yes.
And I was interested in asking your opinion when it comes to portraying a real life person. Is there an obligation to portray him in a certain light, or her in a certain light, or in a fictional world as the movie takes place in, are you allowed to take liberties?
Well, that's a gigantic question that I don't think really has a single answer. It depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to make a film that is a portrayal of the person as an historical, document, right? Then I think there's a different kind of expectation or standard that you probably should stick with. I mean, one of the things that I talk about in some of my classes is, for instance, the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx, right?
Right.
And there's this whole moment in the movie where the movie says that he was banned from playing in the state of Georgia. And there's all of these newspaper articles that are flying around on screen, Ray Charles banned from playing in the state of Georgia. And the movie ends with legislators getting together on a day, it's identified, and saying Ray Charles was banned and we apologize. Okay, it's all bogus. Never happened. He was never banned from playing in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
So that's very deceptive. Same thing with A Beautiful Mind.
The Penn ceremony.
Well, not only the Penn ceremony, which is bogus, but the Nobel Prize acceptance speech. There is no Nobel Prize acceptance speech. What the guy really said was, "I wish it was more money." He didn't say, to his wife, you are all of my reasons, or whatever it is that he says. I mean, that's all bogus. Now you say, well, we're trying to create something like, a filmmaker like Werner Herzog, who fictionalizes elements in his documentaries because he's trying to create some other way of seeing the truth. I mean, all of it is about, I think, what you're trying to do. So the whole Bruce Lee thing, and again, I haven't seen the film, and I've just read about some of the controversy, and I saw he just said some things about the complaints about that. But am I correct in the part that I read that he is not identified as Bruce Lee in the movie? They don't actually say his name. Is that true?
I'm trying to recall.
I don't think they do.
I know they referred to him as Kato.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they referred to him too as the lead in the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Right. But they don't actually
I don't know
say
if
I don't think
Bruce
they
Lee.
say Bruce Lee.
And I think again, this is just kind of my thinking, is that because I read that about that character, and then I think there's another character that's clearly supposed to be somebody, but they also don't mention
Steve
him
McQueen is in it.
Oh,
and I don't know if they explicitly say
They do.
Steve okay,
They
so
do.
they do.
Okay. So, but there was some other character I think they didn't say the name or identify them specifically. So, I mean, it's pretty clear, I think, in at least what I understand about that movie. And again, not having seen it, I feel a little, on the edge here commenting. But
Of course.
but just to say that clearly it's supposed to be fiction. I mean, I know what the ending is. That didn't
you
happen
already know
either.
that, yeah.
So I mean, it's like Inglourious Bastards, right? Hitler did not die.
Watching a movie.
Yeah, So yeah, I mean, I think
didn't they fabricate some of the Bruce Lee story by Jason Scott Lee?
I imagine so. Yeah.
I think it had to do with how he broke his back.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's been a while since I've seen
Yeah.
it. but I'm
So
pretty
I
sure.
mean, it's all. I mean, it's all. Nobody knows for sure about anything anyway.
Yeah.
And so we have historical documents that we believe are accurate, that we find out maybe they aren't accurate.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the question.
Uh-huh.
I think it has to do with what are you trying to do as a filmmaker, or as an artist of some kind. I mean, if honestly what you're trying to do is just smear somebody and tell a bunch of lies about them and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I'm probably going to disagree with that
pretty
kind of
immoral,
approach.
Yeah, unethical.
But
if you take a satirical approach.
yeah, but then sure, yeah, if you're gonna, I mean, you go to a celebrity roast, they're saying a lot of things about people that aren't true, because the goal is to be funny, and everybody knows that. Everybody accepts that. Probably still hurts.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can imagine.
But anyhow. So yeah, I'm trying to think of what else I really liked. I wish you had a release
List
schedule
I
or
can
something.
find one. Let me see.
But
I just want to say I watched a movie last December. I think it came out in December. Which Quinn, I've raved about it to Quinn. I think you might have seen it. I'm not sure. It was At Eternity's Gate with Willem Dafoe. It was not Leonardo da Vinci.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. Yeah. That movie. I loved that movie.
I've heard good things about
I hadn't
that.
seen it yet, but I'm excited to see The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing that. I like The Witch quite a bit, and so I'm interested in seeing that for sure. I did. I mean, as far as Marvel movies go, I really did like Captain Marvel quite a bit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
And
that's surprising.
That was my least.
I think.
favorite one.
Yeah, I think.
Was it? Yeah.
I think I saw you after you saw it at the college, and then we both agreed that I liked it. But I liked it because I like Brie Larson, personally.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the only reason why I kind of really liked it. But
yeah.
Let me see. Oh, Escape Room. There's Escape Room. Glass.
Glass, underwhelmed.
I didn't see it.
The Beach Bum, awesome.
The Beach Bum.
If you have an hour and a half of your day that you get free to waste, The Beach Bum is that hour and a half that you should waste.
What did you like about that movie?
I didn't like anything about that movie. And in turn, I ended up loving it.
Because you hated everything about it?
It was like, the first 30 minutes, I sat there in the front row and I was like, you know what? This isn't working for me. The way it was edited, just the flow of it.
Yeah.
And then like an hour into it, I just decided to let go.
Mm.
And then I was like, this is great.
That's good.
It's absurdist.
Yeah.
It's abstract. Earlier we were talking about what sort of things, kind of gravitate to. I kind of gravitate towards, absurd, abstract sort of things more and more now.
Yeah, I feel like every time you and I go see a movie, whenever there's like a really like kind of subtle, just like somebody kind of subtly just smirks awkwardly into the camera, you can't help but just to die laughing. Everyone looks at you like, how is that even funny? It's just it's ridiculous stuff.
But as I'm going to the movies less and less.
Really?
Oh yeah, like it's taken a something for me really to be interested in to pay the price of admission to go see it.
Did you see Hellboy?
No.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you like superhero or comic book inspired stuff. So.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Or Curse of La Llorona.
No, I didn't
No?
see Curse of La Llorona. If I could recommend anything, I would recommend Barry to people.
Oh, yes.
Barry
I
on
agree.
HBO. As,
the series?
Bill Hader show.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
That's such a great-
I know Matt talked to us about
Yeah,
it a long time ago.
Right, yeah.
such a great movie.
Yeah, it took me a while to get on, like, to come around to it, and it may be the best thing on television. It is that great.
I'm just, I can't believe you hadn't watched it before I did. Because, like, yeah. But, yeah, no, if you have an HBO subscription, you can watch it on Amazon, too, I think, right?
If you have HBO.
Right, yeah.
Oh, if you have HBO.
Or I mean, probably buy per episode or something. Yeah.
Now, have you guys heard about that new Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus package? That's a solid deal.
How much is it?
It's like $79.
Oh, for a month? And you get all that?
No, it's like $13 a month, and you get all
Oh, wow. That's wild.
But that's the way streaming packages are going. You know, we were talking about that earlier. Now they're going to start bundling up, and you'll have Showtime Max with Cinemax.
Yeah. And you'll have more choices than ever. Yeah, I mean, when I was in video distribution and I started saying to people that the studios are all going to eventually sell their own product directly to us. And that's pretty much where we're headed.
Yeah.
You're going to have the Disney streaming service. You're going to have the Fox streaming or whatever, so I mean, that's just the nature of the way the business is going. But
yeah.
What did you guys think about Universal pulling that one movie out of release, The Hunt?
They pulled it out of release?
Yeah. They didn't just
wow.
postpone it. No, they said that they are taking it out of release all the way. I mean,
I've heard differing opinions.
Yeah,
on it.
My personal feeling is it's the right choice, and I'll tell you why. Because now they can say that they did the right thing, and there's no blame.
Yeah, from a PR perspective, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, when Kubrick released A Clockwork Orange in England, and some gang of kids beat up an old person, and the media made a big deal out of Clockwork Orange was the inspiration for this, Kubrick pulled the movie from release in England and said, okay, then it's not shown anymore. He was getting death threats from people also, but at the same time, if it's not there, then you can't blame that thing anymore. And so
that makes sense.
If you, and I get the arguments about, well, but this is censorship, in a certain level. Well, it's not censorship because the government did not say you are not allowed to release this movie. Yeah. They said we are choosing not to release this movie. I mean, when Gangsterland was going to come out, the scene in Gangsterland was the gangsters going into a movie theater and shooting up the movie theater with machine guns. That the incident in Colorado at
Aurora.
Yeah, in Aurora at the movie theater happened before that movie came out. So they cut that scene from the movie and rewrote that scene to take place in Chinatown, Los Angeles, and went and reshot all of that and so on. And you say, well, isn't that, again, like, that's kind of weird? I don't think so. I think that it is about, not wanting to feel like you are in some way contributing to or, exploiting that thing. I mean, and again, another case from class, that Sleepy Hollow TV series, they had some scheduled tweet or something about how it's National Headless Day or something that came out the day that a journalist lost his head, into ISIS because he was kidnapped by ISIS. It looks incredibly tasteless and insensitive, and there's no way that they plan. You don't do something like that on purpose. Yeah. You apologize, you pull it, and you say sorry. I don't think you say art should not deal with these things. I mean, that story, The Hunt, has been around forever. It's just Most Dangerous Game. And so I don't think that's what anybody is saying. But certainly at the moment, that's not the thing that we need out there. Yeah. And so
just
I'd be
because
fine
they pull
with
it.
a re-release down the road.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just about to say that.
Or maybe like straight to Hulu or something.
Yeah, I mean, which they probably will, but it's not always true. I mean, sometimes movies get shelved forever. So,
Yeah.
Sometimes you need, that commentary.
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
What happened with Planet of the Apes for everyone that doesn't know that's listening right now?
It's just a commentary, at least from my perspective, on civil rights.
Oh, okay. Right.
You know.
I thought it got like shelved or something too.
No.
I was like, what?
I'm just
Okay.
saying,
just at the time
that
it came out, yeah.
Yeah.
It is important that, art that holds up a mirror to society and the human condition should be allowed to be, see the light of day.
For sure.
But I definitely agree that bad
Now's
timing
not
on
the
this
now,
one.
now's not the right
no,
time.
and I mean, of course, no intention on their part. It wasn't like, they rushed into production after these incidents.
The trailer came out a long time ago.
Yeah,
it did.
I mean, and
Just bad timing all around.
right,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Another movie that came out this year that I'm not sure if you're a fan of the series. I would assume you would be. John Wick 3 came out. I love action movies personally. Are you a fan of that genre?
yeah, I mean, it's incredible that they just keep getting bigger and bigger box office.
Yeah.
I really like the first one a lot. I mean, again, it's amazing that they just keep finding a bigger audience.
Franchises, man.
Yeah. So
Keanu Reeves is just so good too.
Have you-
I'm a huge fan.
Have you seen, there's a video on YouTube where someone took Keanu Reeves out of the Matrix and deep-faked Bruce Lee into it. And what's crazy, man, it works. And it's so awesome.
Really?
yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I've really been wondering about where that's going to lead.
Oh, you know where it's going to lead already.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's already being used on stuff and you don't even know.
Yeah,
it.
how long before we see James... Well, just speaking from like a movie perspective, how long before we see James Dean?
Oh yeah,
in a
well, I
movie
mean,
with
that's what
somebody?
Cameron was talking about that a long time ago. Is that if he could just have virtual actors, then he could do whatever he wanted, literally, which he practically did with Avatar. Of course. And yes, I think we will start to see some of this other kind. I mean, we've already been seeing it in commercials and so on. Licensed people. They're talking about taking the Ronnie James Dio hologram on tour. So.
That's so crazy.
Well, yeah, and then people say, "Oh, that's so terrible" or whatever. Well, I mean, it's something to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
They already did that with Tupac back in the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting.
I don't know.
They did that with in the movie that just came out yesterday, that one Beatles inspired movie.
Mm-hmm.
They had old John Lennon in that movie. Like they like CGI'd an actor to look like John Lennon as 75 years old, and he was like still alive, and he was living on some like fisherman's like wharf place out in England. It was crazy. Yeah. But that was like the coolest part of the movie. Like it was so cool. So I don't know. It's interesting to think that maybe one day you'll see a movie, or that'll just become the standard where it's like there won't be any actual actors. You could just program literally.
Or you'll
everything.
see your face robbing a bank.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concern there, I guess, but
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, Quinn?
Anything, Dad?
Yeah.
No, not for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all that deepfake stuff is interesting. It's entertaining in a curiosity sense, seeing Jim Carrey in The Shining, and I just saw one where Bill Hader is on.
Oh yeah,
David
that he
Letterman.
Morphs into whoever he
Tom
sees
Cruise
impersonating.
and,
Yeah,
Seth
it's
Rogen.
creepy.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
That's
so,
weird.
But yeah, I mean, and it does raise a lot of. Obviously raises a lot of different kinds of issues. What you're going to be able to do and what kind of manipulation will be going on. It'll be a lot harder to find the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To go back to kind of an earlier question, what do you look for in movies that you're watching? Like, what makes them, in your opinion, what do you like when directors take certain liberties, or I don't know, just what things do you see in movies that you kind of gravitate towards as opposed to not? Is that kind of hard to answer? I don't
know. I mean, I guess the easy answer is I just want something good.
Yeah. So what is good, I guess?
Well, I mean, that's going to be, to me, that's the only, that's the meaning that it's going to have.
Yeah, to you, what do you look for?
But it's not going to mean anything to you, So not in the same
Yeah.
way that it does to me. What's good as far as I'm concerned,
Right.
I have very strange reactions to things. I laugh when I really like something.
I'm the same way.
And so something will happen and it will not be a funny moment.
Yeah.
But because I think that the way it was done is so clever, or that shot worked or whatever, I will laugh, and it's a very inappropriate reaction as far as a lot of other people are concerned.
Right.
So that's sort of a challenge. But good. That's a tough one, and because things can be good in lots of different ways.
Right.
Like to talk about the Fulci movies, it's like City of the Living Dead or The Beyond. Those movies are narratively incoherent at a certain level, but that's part of the point of them, and that's part of why they work the way they do.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want that from everything. But in those cases, you do want that. And so that does work. So, some character gets her skull squeezed open and vomits all her guts out, and I'm cracking up because it's so shocking and it's just so completely over the top.
Yeah.
And again, it's not for everybody. And it's not as if I'm enjoying it in the sense of I wish it on somebody.
I
or
see what you mean.
Just like that scene in Midsummer, Quinn.
The subway scene in The Possession.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my 10
she's
favorite
flailing
movies.
Around and stuff.
Unbelievable.
I can't help but smirk during that scene just because it's so well done and it's so awesome.
Yeah, the whole movie. Again, that's one of my 10 favorite films.
That movie's gnarly.
Oh my gosh, I just can't. It's insane, and it's just so brilliant. But again, not for everybody,
right?
And I would not say, "Hey, you should watch this movie."
Yeah. No, that makes
because that might be a bad thing.
Kind of just boils down to your preference. And your bias, kind of,
and mood. You can be in a mood for something, and
then also sometimes your own standards that you set for what's good get subverted, and then
absolutely,
it makes it even better.
Yeah,
so.
For me personally, I just always gravitate towards dialogue. I just love movies with really strong dialogue or long scenes where it's just like Quentin Tarantino does it a lot, where he just kind of sets the camera down and just.
And yet, one of your favorite movies is The Revenant, where there's little
to no dialogue. Yeah,
exactly.
Love that movie too.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense.
Yeah, and again, to kind of go back to this thing of the difference in taste and so on. Like this movie Beyond the Black Rainbow, which I love, and watched and then wanted to share, and I knew my brother would get it, so he had to come over and watch it with me, and so we were watching it, and then my wife walked into the room and she sat down and she watched a few minutes of it and then just got up and walked out, and clearly not for her, know. So, and I didn't think it would be, and I didn't say, hey, you should watch this with us or anything like that. But again, it's just a taste thing and a mood thing. But usually I'm looking for some kind of clarity. I like movies for the most part that are pretty clear about who the protagonist is, what they're after, and why I should be paying attention to that. And, not every movie does that, of course. But that's kind of a place that I'll start with.
That makes sense.
What I'm looking for. And I want some kind of emotional involvement. And again, not always looking for that either. Sometimes you just want to see something that has a lot of car chases or explosions or whatever.
Yeah, Fast and Furious.
Yeah, maybe so.
I've spent money on those movies, when I'm trying to mindlessly just,
kind of just detach
Die
a little
bit
Yeah,
inside.
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very, very different.
It's visual alcohol.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Those,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, there are
Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
Visual alcohol.
Honestly, I hate to admit it, but that movie looks really like just fun to watch. Was it? Did you see it?
I did, and a lot like tequila. It was visual alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like, you know, start to peel things underneath. You know, you're not gonna get, you know, the lasagna's not so thick, but
Yeah.
still tastes good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On the
for sure.
surface.
It's pizza.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you want a big
Yeah,
man.
it's still pizza.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be caviar every time.
no, and you wouldn't want that. You know, you wouldn't.
How boring would that be?
Yeah, I mean, because it's the same. Because it's always at some level, you know, and you have to have difference in order to appreciate the difference.
Right.
So
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah. I used to be like a huge movie snob back in the day, and I would only watch movies that were nominated for Oscars. And recently I've gone away from that, and I have to say my life has improved pretty substantially. I've enjoyed movies more now because I don't have that.
I used to only watch The Crown and Downtown Abbey.
yeah, that's basically what it was for me. Like just older movies where like the consensus was these are good movies. That's like all I would watch.
Yeah.
But now it's more subjective, which is really fun. And I kind of like tend to look for movies where they have a clear goal in mind, where it's like we want to make a movie like that is centered around action, and that's like what we want to make. So even if it's cheesy, if they clearly like set out to do that and they achieve that, then to me it's like pretty good, and I like it.
I will say one thing that has always kind of irked me about criticism, maybe film criticism, is the labeling of what is high art versus low art, or highbrow versus lowbrow. I always find what is really interesting or just immersive is when people can disguise high art as low art.
Okay, like Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Romero's Dawn
Yeah.
of the Dead. Yeah. yeah.
Not Zack Snyder's?
Well, I mean, just because it's so clearly about consumer culture, and so set in the shopping mall, the way that it was, and I mean, he's pretty clear about it also with the scenes in the movie where, you know, it is the American dream. You get this giant place to live, you get access to every material object you could ever want. And she's sitting there bored out of her mind because she's got everything, and that's not what it's about. And, you know, and that's this great emotional core at the center of that movie that also has zombies getting the tops of their heads sliced off.
Yeah.
And, you know, and all that other stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's real mastery. My only problem is with the structure where, you know, high art is Shakespeare and Shakespeare alone, and everything else that falls under it is low brow, low art. You know, kind of. It has this sort of like bourgeoisie, sort of peasant.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
feel
type of
to it.
yeah.
And that's always irked me. But besides that,
no, that makes sense.
kind of just referencing back to where we were talking about criticism.
Yeah.
Just popped in my head.
Yeah.
No, well, that is a good statement to say. I mean, it is annoying. You see that around every February too, but I feel like that's kind of going away.
I mean, one example that has always sticking out to me when I was in mass media, they show this big, like, two towers, and they have, you know, low art, high art at the top. And this was around the same time when Meryl Streep was like, mixed martial art is not mixed martial art. And then at the very bottom of that diagram was MMA, UFC. And it's something I was just thinking about on the way over here. I was listening to a podcast, you know, people were discussing, you know, the minutia and changing, you know, the angle on a jab and the repetitiveness of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm starting to lose track, but
it's an art in itself. Yeah.
Self-dedicating, you know, your body is a canvas too in that aspect. And the amount of work and things they've put in, it's not so much different in my eyes than a Van Gogh or
like high art and low art.
I mean,
it's the same kind of dichotomy.
how does one define the difference between high art and low art? What is the criteria that separates it?
Yeah.
My gut instinct is to say what lasts.
Mm.
And
That's true.
You know, there's a reason that Shakespeare is still around after
Yeah, no,
400
for sure,
years.
for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And I suspect that some of the things that we're getting now probably won't be around next year.
Yeah. True.
And you know, so that may be a criteria, and that says something about, I'll say, its usefulness to people. You know, that like what people get out of something. You know, and they want to go back to it again, and that creates something that lasts. And I think maybe if you think about it in those terms, as opposed to strictly these other kind of cultural or social terms, you know, I think because horror films are often treated as low art, one step above pornography, but at the same time, Hamlet and Macbeth are horror stories, you know, and undeniably so. You take out the horror elements and there's nothing left. So it's possible that you have something within a particular genre or within a particular idea that could have lasting sort of impact that people could want to go back to. But you also have stuff that's disposable, you know?
Yeah.
I mean... Yeah.
Iron Chef America.
Yeah.
Season 22.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, are we really in 400 years? Are people going to be watching that? Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Iron Chef America.
Yeah, maybe.
3026.
Yeah. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're kind of winding down. We're kind of getting to the end of our time. But I ask this to everybody that comes onto the podcast generally, or I'm trying to. At the time that this episode airs, I will have asked this to the last, you know, maybe 10 guests. What advice would you give somebody wanting to get into the industry, wanting to start out and get their feet wet within cinema and work within it? How do you start?
Well, I mean, it's going to sound, I don't know, it's probably going to sound flippant again. But I mean, I don't mean to be. It's you either want to do it or you don't. And if you want to do it, there's nothing that's going to stop you, and you're going to just keep going until it happens or you're dead, frankly. And I say that because, you know, there were a lot of fellow students when I was getting an MFA in screenwriting from Chapman, and there were a lot of people who were like, "Oh, screenwriting! You know, I'm going to go to this program and I'm going to take it for 2 years and I'm going to learn how to write a screenplay and it's going to sell for $1 million and I'm going to move into a house with a swimming pool."
Yeah.
And you know, 2 years after school is over, that hadn't happened because they realized that's not what happens, and they quit. And so they didn't obviously have to do it.
Right.
And there's a difference between that and, you know, that you have to do it and you really don't have a choice, and that is what you're doing. And that's really hard to, I don't know. That's just something that's either there or not. I'm not going to get into all the arguments about, you know, whether you have talent or whether that's taught or you're born with it or, you know, any of those kinds of things. But I do feel like in this particular area especially, that you have to have a drive, and if you don't have that drive, then you're not going to make it, and then you're not going to want to make it. A friend of mine got one of his first meetings with a studio, and he went to the studio to meet with the exec, and the exec's previous meeting was ending and the door opened and Martin Scorsese walked out. Okay, so you're following Martin Scorsese. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you're not ready for that, you know, then I don't know. You got some thinking to do. Yeah. So I would just say don't give up, but the truth is that you won't be able to if this is really what you're after. Right. And I suspect that's true in music. Oh yeah, definitely. Any of those creative kinds of things. Yeah. And it makes it often you kind of look foolish to outsiders, to people who don't understand why you can't just quit that and get a sensible job, or something.
Yeah.
But that's not what you're made for. If that's not what you're made for.
Do you think that you have to get a degree? Have you seen that getting a degree does help you get a job within the film industry as opposed to not, or is it more experience based?
No, that's not an easy question to answer. I mean, I think there may be some places where that kind of works. I mean, you go to a certain film school. If you go to USC, for instance, then there's a lot of people who have been to USC who are in the business who will help fellow
alumni,
people who graduated from there. So there's that aspect, but it's not the same kind of thing. Like I used to teach at Penn State, and one of the campuses there had a plastics engineering program that was one of the best plastics engineering programs in the country.
Right.
And my students who were taking my film classes for Gen Ed and who were plastics engineering students, when they would be seniors, they would start coming to me and saying, okay, I'm not going to be here next week because I'm being flown to such and such a place for an interview, because these people were needed in these companies, and they were actively recruiting from there. There is a real connection between program, degree, job, right? And if that's what you want to do, then that's the way to do it. You know? That's not true, I think, in the creative area. I mean, especially these days. You know, I mean, 8-year-olds are millionaires from YouTube, so
Yeah. So just don't give up, and just if you really want it, you got to buy all into it. Correct?
Yeah, but again, it's you won't be able to. That's what I think is really the difference. Is you'll quit, but you'll come back because you just can't do anything else.
I see.
And I think that's a really important component, because it's rejection all over the place. Yeah. So.
Does it ever get easier, like accepting the rejections and all that stuff, or is it kind of just something that I don't know, you have to just kind of figure out for yourself, or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, you have to figure that out for yourself. I mean, there's some people who still have a problem with it, even though they have successful careers. And I've gotten better at kind of accepting that. And a part of it is from the idea that I understand that my stuff is not for everybody. But again, my stuff still, there is an audience.
Yeah.
And, so just going to kind of keep trying to find that audience. But sure, you want your stuff to go and have somebody say they love it, But somebody just read something of mine and came back and said, I'm not really connecting with it, but I like your writing, so send me something else if you got it,
Yeah.
So, and if that's the best that you get at the moment, then that's what you do. So
yeah. Would you say it's also part of it is just believing within yourself as well, and just having?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Is that it is, you do have to have that idea that this is what you are going to do.
Got it.
I mean, and if you don't have that, then obviously if somebody says this is lousy, then you'll quit. You'll give up. And I mean, it's not like this is something that is for anybody to make a choice. An analogy is you want to play professional football. Okay, well, there's a lot of competition in professional football, and you have to have certain kinds of things. I mean, I could not play professional football.
I could not either.
Yeah. So, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm interested in or made for. That's not what is my thing. I can't quit. But there are those people who that is their thing, and then that's what they go and do. Yeah. So part of it is trying to find what is that thing for you, and whether it is professional football or whether it is being a plastics engineer. Okay, whatever that is. On the creative side, I tend to find it does seem a little different in terms of the way people kind of burn with that. Yeah. Desire to do this thing.
That makes sense.
So
cool. And then you mentioned you had a book out that just came out last month. What is it called?
It's called In the Scrape,
in the script.
So that just came out last month, and that's on Amazon. Yeah, everything is on marksteensland.com.
marksteensland.com.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there any other social media you would like to plug?
Everything is on there. If you just go to
marksteensland.com.
if you go to
Cool.
that website, then all the links for everything else are there.
Nice. And then what's the book about, if you want to go a quick synopsis?
It's about two brothers who are preteen, and they are in a single-parent household. Their dad is abusive and alcoholic, and they want to escape and go to California to find their mom, who left the family 5 years earlier. And so they are trying to figure out how they can save up money to get out to California, and they're planning to get away from their dad during a deer hunting trip.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. A lot of suspense, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to give it a read. I hope you all do as well. marksteensland.com. You'll be able to find it there. Thank you both for coming on. This was pretty fun for me. I hope it was fun for you guys. And we will be back next week with another guest. I don't know who that guest will be at the time, because we're kind of pre-recording this a little bit in advance. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll be back again then. Take care.